Hi guys, this is Jay. Kelly and I wanted to share a board and batten wall with y'all that we put up in our guest room, and this is me explaining exactly how to do that. First off, I want to start off with a list of supplies. You'll need paint. I suggest you splurge and get the higher quality paint so that it only requires one coat. You'll need paint brushes, a paint roller frame, paint knit roller, and a paint tray and liner. Here we use 1x4 by 12-inch prime MDF boards. We'll also need caulk and a caulking tool. You'll need some wood filler, also with sandpaper, a nice level, and a brad nailer, along with the miter saw. Okay, so here's an example of the color of the wall before we painted and applied the board and batten wall. Okay, so here's the wall after I painted it the new color. I decided to paint the wall before applying the MDF boards and the board and batten wall so that I would only have to touch up the paint in between the squares, and therefore it would be a less of a cumbersome job. I took a measuring tape and we decided to actually keep our baseboards in place, so I didn't remove those, as you can see on the bottom of the picture. I took a measuring tape and I measured from the top of the baseboard to the very top of the ceiling. I then took the 12-foot MDF board, went outside and cut it to the best of my ability by measuring twice and cutting once the entire length of the wall there. Here's a very short video after both of the vertical MDF boards have been placed on the left and right side of the wall. As you can see, the board is as close to the other wall as possible, and you can see the small holes that the brad nailer creates. Here we have an image after both vertical and horizontal MDF boards have been applied to the wall by using the same measuring method of measuring twice and cutting once. After the vertical MDF boards were in place, I took the measuring tape from the inside of one MDF board on the left all the way to the inside of the right MDF board. I measured that, and then I went outside with the miter saw to cut that one and install it. I also did the same on the top, and not assuming that they were the same distances, because there may be small differences and you want to be as exact as possible. I also used a small rubber mallet to tap the MDF boards into place, ensuring that there was no bowing, but that it was a tight fit. After having the outer border of MDF boards on the wall and secured, I then used a measuring tape to measure from the inside of the farthest left MDF board to the inside of the farthest right MDF board. This length in inches was divided by 6, and that's how wide each of the board and batten squares were to be. Also subtracted the roughly 3.2 inches that the width of each MDF board was to come up with 16.7 inches for each board and batten square on the final wall. Next, I used a brad nailer to attach each of the vertical MDF boards in place, being sure to measure from the top to the bottom of the MDF boards each time before cutting the vertical MDF boards, because the distances were different and not exact on each board. Here's a picture after the 5 vertical MDF boards have been attached to the wall. You can notice that the distance in between each of them worked out well, and I didn't have to adjust any of the power outlets. After installing all of the vertical MDF boards, it was time to move on to install the horizontal MDF boards. In order to do this properly, I decided that I wanted to have 5 squares in between each of the columns. In order to do that, I measured using a measuring tape from the bottom of the very top MDF border to the top of the very bottom MDF border. I then took that total length and divided it by 5, factoring in the widths of each of the MDF boards that would make up the squares. I then used the brad nailer to attach the first upper MDF vertical board. After attaching it and ensuring that it was level, I moved to the right to attach the next MDF board in the next column, also using the level and ruler to ensure that they were as level and even as possible. Here's an image after the 4 horizontal MDF boards have been placed in 2 different columns side by side. As you can see, all of the squares are very similar and almost exactly even. At this point, I decided to add all of the vertical MDF boards on the upper level using the same technique, using a level and a ruler and a pencil to draw a line to ensure that they are all even. This next image is just the same thing, using the ruler and the level and a pencil to ensure that all of the horizontal MDF boards are as even as possible, evenly spaced apart and on the same level as the other MDF boards that neighbor them. Last but not least, this image captures all of the horizontal MDF boards in place. After all of the boards were in place, it was time to use a wood filler to fill in all of the small holes that the brad nailer created. I used a very minute amount of wood filler in each of the holes, gave it time to dry, and then sanded away any excess wood filler. And here's a picture of all of the dry wood filler just prior to sanding. Next, I moved on to caulking. This step is very important. I highly suggest that you watch another YouTube video illustrating exactly how to properly caulk because it's a deal breaker. In doing the caulking, you want to ensure that you hit every edge and only use a small amount of caulk so that you don't have any excess, but you want to fill it appropriately so that the space in between the MDF boards and the wall flows seamlessly and it doesn't seem as if it's just one unit and not separate. I then took the paint and painted over all of the MDF board after the caulk had adequate time to dry, and this is the final product. I took some more images of it just to show you all. We think this wall looks great. It's a great addition to our guest room, and hopefully all of our guests that stay in there enjoy the wall as much as we enjoy creating it. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. And I look forward to you looking at our future videos, as we also took on a extensive project in installing a board and batten wall, a little different to this, in our nursery. Thank you, and please hit the subscribe button and like, and also follow.